favourites, and people are nodding along. You're like, oh, my people. So, but we have to do a thing where we... so give me a cheer if you kind of know what the show's about. Give me a cheer if you don't know. It's absolutely cool, because what normally happens is so 4 beautiful young girls will shuffle in early, and then we go, and then he dismembered the bodies and flushed them down the toilet, and then very shortly afterwards they shuffle out again. So we have to say, if you want seats, there's some at the front. We don't chat to the audience out of choice. So if you want to, because you're all fucking weirdos, aren't you? If you want to take a seat down here, there's some seats at the front. Honestly, we won't pick on you. It's not that kind of thing. So basically, All Killa, No Filla is about. We do a podcast about serial killers. And Rachel and I are comedians, as is Michael J. Dolan, and we found that we both had a mutual interest in them, and then we found out that loads of other creepy fucks like you do as well.
I've actually thought that there's only 3 things that you can say, oh, who's your favourite about? So there's members of One Direction, who's your favourite? There's who's your favourite footballer? You could have who's your favourite child, but that's not very nice. And the other one is, who's your favourite serial killer? So I think they're the 3 times. Who's your favourite?
Yeah, give me a cheer if you have a favourite.
3.
Yeah. And you know what? There's fucking more than that as well. You're all liars. Because I see you silently nodding along in the dark later on. I know you fucks. So today, we've got Michael J. Dolan. So we have a guest who comes on and well, I told you which one you were going to do.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I pushed an agenda here.
Oh, you gave me a choice, actually.
Oh, did I? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
between the Zodiac and H.H. Holmes.
Yeah.
So today we're doing H.H. Holmes, who was one of my favourites. And he is fucking horrible, but that always makes the best sort of talking about. So, we'll just crack on. We have to do a disclaimer in case the Daily Mail ever get hold of our podcast.
Which we secretly hope they do.
Oh, imagine the shitstorm. I'd love it. I'd just like to get posts. Hate mail would be quite nice.
Retro.
Oh, it'd be email, wouldn't it? It'd be email. I don't know what I'm thinking of.
Mad people still do posts.
yeah. Daily Mail people as well are still, It'll be like one of those writing sets with a little mouse in the corner. Right, okay, Rachel, do it.
Okay, welcome to All Killa, No Filla podcast live with me, Rachel Fairburn, and Kiri, Pritchard, McLean. Just before we start, to let you know, we do this podcast because we have a mutual interest in serial killers. It's not hero worship. We both have strong father figures in our lives, so and as long as we're doing this podcast, it stops us from writing to them in prison.
So thanks very much. So we're going to do H.H. Holmes today. So his real name is Herman Mudgett, which is like the most Radio 4 afternoon play I've ever heard. Like the name, like, oh, here comes Mr. Herman Mudgett.
It's a great name.
It is a cool name.
I always think that's like the first sign that something's wrong with somebody when they've changed their name. Just if they're not have to, and they've just gone, no, I'm going to be Holmes. Something's fucked up.
Yeah, so he changed to. There's seats in the front, guys. If you want to come in, don't worry, we're not going to pick on you. Just wander down. There's loads of you. That, do you know what, that makes me feel panic, you know, like when you're on a tube and there's loads of people and you're like, if there's one fucking mental in here, we're all fucked. But welcome, come and sit down. He changed his name at some point to H.H. Holmes, and to be honest, he had loads of different names, because he was a bit of he was basically a Dell boy, like he had everything short of a market stall. So he was born May 16th, 1861, and he had a very strict father, as often appears in these kind of things. He was bullied in school, and one of the things that the bullies do, because a lot of serial killers, they have if you didn't know this is what this is, it's okay to leave. A lot of serial killers have like a point, usually in their childhood, where things kind of turn for them. And what the bullies did is they locked him up with a skeleton, like face to face with his medical skeleton that was in the school, thinking like, that's going to freak him out. And he fucking loved it. Yeah. He was like gazing into its hollow sockets like, I'm finally home.
He really liked it when the hand sort of went on his face as well. It was sort of the creepiest.
It really is, isn't
quite
it?
Sexy.
Yeah.
Things I've done to it.
It is. It's like a Lady Gaga video, isn't it? If you imagine it. But apparently as well, he was like, rumours came out later on when he was a bit older that he used to torture animals, yawn, 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 they all do that. And boring. And he used to also pick on younger kids. He was a bully, basically. He was a sort of a vindictive man. Now, I kind of think generally as a serial killer, he's a bit unusual, because a lot of them do it, they're like, I can't get hard unless I'm pushing it in a wound, right? Which is gross. But,
more common than you think, though.
Yeah. feet, isn't there?
Yeah.
He you always find out loads about our guests when we do this. The only guest that we have had so far who's had children came on yesterday and chose to do Fred and Rose.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did it. He was pretty much totally driven by money. He just wanted money. He was just a massive prick.
Yeah, and he was a massive prick, and he was also.
The love of it.
No, there was no craft in it. That's what bothered me.
It was also quite interesting because he's dubbed America's first serial killer, which is quite the title. He's America's first serial killer. If you ignore what they did to the Native American Indians.
Which they fucking do, to be honest. Well, coincidentally, he was descended from the very first settlers in the area. And then he went to medical school and he graduated from Michigan in 1884. And while he was there, right, he eventually became a pharmacist. While he was at the medical school, he used to steal cadavers, right? Like, like sneak them out in your lunchbox. I don't know how the fuck he was doing that, right? He's got a really big backpack, hasn't he? Nothing to see here. So he used to sneak these bodies out of the morgues there, and then he would disfigure them, and then he would create accidents, throw the corpse in there. In the meantime, he'd taken out a life insurance policy on this person, and he would say that they died in an accident, and he would make money. And on one of them, and this is like in the turn of, basically this is like in the 1880s, on one of them he claimed $12,500, which at that time is fucking millions, and he got away with it, and he would just by like create a new accident every day. It's like, I wonder, it's like, you know that bit in Sherlock where you think he jumps off the roof but it's actually the homeless people. I imagine it's all that kind of shit. If you haven't seen that, yeah, I was going to say, if you haven't seen that episode, I'm really sorry, it's fucking great.
He didn't actually pay for his own time at medical school. His first wife paid for that as well, didn't she?
Yeah.
So he's earning he's pilfering all this money, and he's just not paying for anything. He's just like a legend, basically.
This is all sounding very familiar.
So he graduated and then he moved to Chicago to practice pharmacy. But he also had loads of other things, like he would change names all the time. So for a while he was like a property developer, which one of my friends who doesn't have a job says he is as well. And he's in, hi Ed. And he would set up promotional deals under a new name, which I don't really understand what promotional deals are in the 1880s.
No.
Because promotional deals to me is a girl with not many GCSEs going, would you like to try this new cheese? I'm not sure what happened there.
Maybe it was just Victorian ladies offering some cheese and showing like a bit of an ankle.
Bit of an ankle.
Like, woo! This is hot stuff.
And then he married this girl called Clara Levering, which is the one who paid for him to go to medical school, paid for all his medical fees. And he changed his name when he graduated to H.H.Holmes. That's when he became known as it. So he married her July the 8th, 1878. And then in January 28th, 1887, he married someone else. He didn't ever really get divorced from Clara.
No.
He tried to, and it made it a bit difficult. He went, this is a lot of paperwork. So he just left it and became a bigamist. And we've all been like that. My tax return is in very much the same state at the moment. But so he married this other woman called, what was her name?
Myrtle Belknap.
That's it. That's another good name.
It is a good name. He married her, and what happened then was it wasn't just a happy marriage. He decided that he was going to he committed a sort of fraud against her father and then tried to poison him. So, and he admitted this as well, didn't he?
Yeah, because he tried to forge this her dad's signature on some properties and went, I'm handing it over to H.H.Holmes. His dad found out and confronted him about it, and he was like, what you need is a nice soothing cup of tea. And he was like, is there poison in it? No! So he got caught out there. And this is all while being a bigamist, which is just not on, is it? But he did have a daughter called Lucy with her, and then he filed for divorce. It was never finalised. Then he had a third wife, who was called Georgina Yoke. They got married in January 9th, 1894, and he had an affair with another woman who he eventually killed, who will come up again.
So basically, he is, a terrible murderer, but he's still got time for the ladies.
Yeah, he's like a lot of hip hop artists.
And if you look at the pictures of him as well. He was really, really handsome.
He was
wasn't
fucking fit, yeah.
He does just look like a typical hipster now.
He totally got like a massive moustache, yeah.
Yeah.
If he had like nautical tattoos and was dressed a bit like someone who works at sea but's never done a day's work in their life, he'd be...
It's amazing how you can go from dashing to bell end in like years, isn't it? Go on.
So he moved to Chicago, which is where kind of he got a job. He basically went to this pharmacist. It was a lady who was running it because her husband, who was the pharmacist, the doctor, he was very ill with cancer, so she took over looking after the pharmacy. He went round and said, "Oh, I'd love to work here. I'm a trained pharmacist." And she never checked his credentials because he was so charming. And if she had, he would have found out that the last place he worked, he'd been struck off for poisoning someone. But she was just like, "That's a lovely moustache." So she...
At this point, like, how many people has he killed?
I think at this point he's only killed like 1 or 2.
Oh, okay.
Only.
So,
Only. Yeah.
minor league. At this
Yeah, at this point, yeah, he's just seen
One
how it
failed
fits.
poisoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a few dogs.
Yeah, it's a slow burner. Give it a chance, things will.
But boy, does he get going.
Yeah.
So when unfortunately this guy, he was called Dr. E.S. Holton, he passed away, he died from his cancer. And in the meantime, H.H.Holmes was like, "This is a lot of stress for you," to the guy's wife. He said, "Why don't you just let me buy the pharmacy? And also while I'm at it, take out life insurance on you and your husband." And she's like, "Well, that does sound nice." She was really transfixed by the fucking huge moustache they had. Like, okay then. And then unfortunately the guy passed away, and then 2 weeks later he killed the old woman and then owned the pharmacy and cashed in on their life insurance,
And
as is his MO.
He told a lot of lies as well, as you would imagine. He told everybody. Everyone's like, "Well, where's this woman that runs the pharmacy?" And he's like, "She moved to California." And then everyone's like, "Oh, right, okay, that sounds reasonable." And then a bit later on, he's just like, "She really likes California and she's not coming back."
Everyone's like, "That does sound like an 86-year-old woman in ill health, you're right." Yeah. So he knocked a bit, he was all over. One of the reasons why it was so hard for the police to catch up with him, other than the fact they were fucking inept, is the fact that he used to jump states, and back then there wasn't like a particularly good communication system, so he jumped states for a little bit after he offed that old woman, and then he came back and he saw there was a massive plot of land opposite his existing pharmacy, and he bought it, and then he started to build the most badass nickname of a place ever, the Murder Castle. Yeah, cool, innit? Really fucking cool.
That's not what the neighbours call it.
No.
They just call it the castle.
Yeah, not as catchy though, is it? Not as catchy. So he brought, and it was huge because he had all this money that he'd accrued from offing various people and life insurance and all these life insurance scams on cadavers. I love that word.
It's amazing though, because he's saving all this money, and he's just got shitloads of money, and he's not really doing anything with it, apart from building a murder castle to murder more people, to get money, to do nothing with it. So it's like he's got the imagination for murder, but he doesn't know how to spend money. It's disappointing. Yeah.
It's like a better version of Brewster's Millions.
So he got this plot of land and he built, it was enormous. The reason it was called a castle because it was huge. It took over a whole block and it was 3 stories high. And on the bottom there was a pharmacy in there was a jewellery shop, there was a sweet shop, there was all sorts. And on the second floor there was a maze of rooms. And on the 3rd floor, it was a hotel. There was 35 sort of normal rooms, and there was some fucked up shit as well. So on the 2nd floor, what he did was he was so smart, right? That is one of his redeeming, other than the moustache, one of his redeeming features, right? So what he had in there was loads of windowless rooms, right? And there was sort of like doorways that would open onto brick walls, staircases that wouldn't go anywhere, hallways at weird angles, some rooms with just like a gas pipe into them, some rooms with a chute into them that went down to a furnace in the basement. It was just this maze, and what he would do is he would hire builders that didn't speak English.
Come on, mate, we've all done it.
He recognises value for money when he sees it. So
we can let him off with that.
Yeah, hard workers.
There's a brilliant Channel 5 documentary called Slaughtered at the Murder Hotel, where they've built like a model of the castle, like a scale, and there's loads of like little stop motion animation puppet things of like him like pushing bodies down chutes and like running around the corridors and stuff. It's fucking ridiculous, and it is on YouTube. So
yeah,
I recommend it.
I think Nintendo are going to develop it in the next couple of years. But it was like all these like horrible windowless rooms and weird corridors, and he'd hire these builders, and then he would sack them after 3 weeks. So no one ever knew except for him what the building looked like, and this is why the builders didn't go, hold on, why are you building all these chutes that lead down to a stretching rack?
And he's like, I thought you didn't speak English.
So it had this sort of fucking mad hotel with like, and he had with hidden boxes, hidden chambers. Basically, he was building a modern day ibis. He reminds me when they describe the castle. It's like, you know, when on Grand Designs when they go, you should have hired a project manager. The whole thing was a fucking disaster. Oh yeah, doors that would only open from the outside as well. You couldn't open them once they were in. So he built this crazy place. 35 of the rooms were perfectly normal.
So it was a functioning business.
Yeah. His work ethic is exceptional. Yeah, really puts a shift in.
What he decided to do then was he would advertise for female staff. Sort of vulnerable young women who he started to say, he put adverts in saying, first of all, he was a man who was ready to marry, didn't he?
That was amazing.
And obviously he's pretty fit, so, you know, we'll get there and like, yeah, I'll have a bit of that. Or whatever they said in the old days, you know, I don't know. Oh, he's jolly spiffing.
I think they said that in Chicago. I think that travelled over.
I think he did. So he's advertising, and these women are turning up, and for a while he's quite charming to them, and then he's just bumping them off, isn't he, basically. Then he advertises for sort of female staff, and he starts taking life insurance out on them. And it's in the contract of employment that they have to have this. It's like a one-man Walmart, right? And he's doing this, and then obviously these women are going missing, but not only that, it says like on his lovers and the guests as well. Like, he's just putting it about everywhere.
Because the Chicago World Fair at the time, which he built the hotel in time for the Chicago World Fair to say, it's loads like the Edinburgh Festival, and there's just like hundreds of thousands of people coming here for not long time, staying here, moving around. You never really know it. No one's got mobile phone signal. Like everyone's just moving around. So he wouldn't kill everyone, but he would pick usually young, beautiful women, and he would take out life insurance while they were staying there, or convince the staff that it was part of their contract. Don't worry, I'll pay for your life insurance, but you have to have it just so I'm covered. And then he would kill them. So this is the thing that he only ever got convicted for 29 murders, 6 attempted ones, but they think it was like a shipment, and it was way up into the hundreds because there was no real way, especially at that time. Like, who's keeping Unfortunately, he didn't keep a tally chart. He did keep one of the fucking... I didn't think he kept trophies until I read something this morning, and he's got one of the creepiest trophy collections. I don't want to spoil it, so we'll get to it later. Because all serial killers take something. They usually, like, Shipman took their wedding rings, and they found like a bag of them hidden in his garage. Fred West took their fingers. Less easy to hide, isn't it?
But nobody ever found them, so he was amazing at hiding out.
Someone is going to find them one day, and they're going to be straight on eBay.
Was it Dharma that had like a kettle full of penises?
Yeah, of course it was Dharma that had a kettle full of penises.
Stuffed full of penises.
Yeah,
and you've got to keep them somewhere.
Yeah, and it had in the fridge. Why not?
So what Mr. H.H.Holmes is doing with these bodies, he's very, very resourceful. He's not just murdering them and just, you know, burying them or whatever. He had in the basement of his house, he would strip some of the bodies of the flesh and make them so they were just skeletons, and he would then sell them to medical schools, no questions asked. So that would happen.
Sell their organs as well.
He'd do all,
because he had an inn.
Yeah, there was all kinds of things that he was doing. He was, like I say, so resourceful. And then some of the people who weren't worth making a skeleton, I don't know how he would know if somebody was like...
You'd be gutted, wouldn't you, if you found out that your great-grandmother like, oh, that one, no, I just burned her skeleton, wasn't nice.
Yeah. She would make an amazing
big
skeleton. Yeah, it's really weird how he chose them. But then he'd just incinerate some of them in the incinerator that he had in his house. Then he had some sort of quicklime, wasn't it?
He had a pit with acid in and one with quicklime. Yeah. So I don't know if he had a big wheel that he spun and he's like, how are we going to get rid of that today? But some of them would be burned in a furnace, some of them would be put on a stretcher. Some of them he apparently did experiments on when they were still alive, just for shits and giggles, because he's completely bonkers.
I just imagine him rushing round everywhere. Like, one minute he's behind the counter at the pharmacy, then he's with some woman in some room having it away. Then he's like, oh, I've got to go. Gets his out and just goes downstairs and strips a corpse of its flesh. He makes me feel useless.
And all of this soundtrack to the Benny Hill theme tune as well. So he then got with a woman called Georgiana Yates that he met while he was still married to the Myrtle, and it's really bizarre. They met, he fell in love with her, and then they got married even though he was technically still married to 2 other women, and she was a woman of tarnished reputation.
Scott.
Yeah, which I think is what most guys are hoping happens. She got the skills. So he married her, and Minnie was what his current wife was one of the witnesses, and then all 3 of them went back to Chicago. Now, in the meantime, this was from Denver. He had been caught doing horse swindling, is the phrase that comes. Swindle's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you love a swindle?
Was he fucking them?
I think, yeah, swindles when you're from behind and it
Horse swindling sounds like, I'm not sure if it is tricking people or the horses. If the horses were pissed off or people were
Well, they can count, can't they? So maybe they were playing cards, I don't know.
That man said he was going to sell me 5 saddles. Brilliant. Horse swindling. In between all this, we must say as well, H.H.Holmes was also performing illegal abortions in his house as well, so he was turning himself to absolutely everything, wasn't he? So from that to horse swindling.
Yeah, Jack Ripper of all trades, he was.
Took his hand to anything. So he's involved with this horse swindling. This was in Denver. Was it in Denver?
Yeah,
he was doing this.
And then they all 3 of them moved back to Chicago. Him, his previous wife. Oh no, his mistress, sorry, and Georgina Yates. I feel like I've lost a page, but it's because he fucking murdered so many of them. It's very hard to keep track of it.
It's like he genuinely can't keep up with it.
Yeah, no,
There's so much
the
going
work
on.
ethic is insane. And so he did the horse whittling, moved back. The woman that he was witness at the wedding he was with in a relationship before, she coincidentally just went missing. And then in July, the police finally caught up with him for the horse swindling. And while he was in there, he made friends with a train robber. Different times. It's very quaint, isn't it? And he was called Marion Hedgepeth. And he basically came up with a plan with him that he was going to fake, H.H.M. was going to fake his own death. And he was going to take out life insurance for £20,000. And if Marion could tell him a lawyer that would help him do it, or someone in the law enforcement, then he would give him $500 and help him get out of prison. So he was like, brilliant. So he set him up with this guy called Colonel Howe. So what he did is he took a body, really badly burnt it, took it down to a beach, disfigured its face, and he just left it there. He then shaved off his moustache, right? Went back to his own hotel, fresh face, and was like, excuse me, is there a Mr. Holmes there, please? And they were like, who are you? No, boy, I'm just a friend of his. I'm definitely not him. Apparently he had a really bad British accent. Everyone's like, this fucking psychopath. Which is the only accurate thing they probably thought. And then this body turned up on the beach with some like identifying marks of H.H.Holmes. And then he went down to the beach and was like, oh, that disfigured face is him. And the insurance company were like, we call bullshit. And he was like, oh, never mind. And he didn't pursue it any further because he was like, yeah, if they do any kind of cursory investigation, I'm absolutely fucked. So
that was the only reason he ever got away with any of it, wasn't it? It was that they just weren't investigating.
No.
Like they had no homicide division or anything.
Yeah.
It was just nobody was. People were just going missing, and nobody really noticed.
I tell you, this could so happen at the Fringe. Like, if there's any psychos in there, be like, all I need is a hotel. And in fact, this venue, fucking windowless rooms, is what I imagine it to be like. So he decided to do. He was going to nail this plan this time. So he met with this guy called Ben. How do you pronounce his surname?
Peetzel.
Ben Peetzel, right? And he had this law enforcement guy.
You've got to say it in that high voice like I just did.
Peetzel. So Ben Peetzel and this Colonel Howe, this law enforcement guy, they said, right, we're going to come up with a plan. What we'll do is we'll make a sort of big explosion happen, and then I'm going to give Peetzel a potion where he'll fall asleep, but he can come back to life again. What have we learned from Romeo and Juliet? I'm going to put makeup on him. Apparently you can do that now as well. To make it look like he's been burnt. And then I'll call the police. I'll say it's H.H. Holmes. And then we can claim on their life insurance, right? So they're all like, well, this just sounds completely kosher. And you are quite trustworthy. So that's what they did. And there was a massive explosion. And then when a guy, like a passerby, builder was passing by, broke down the door, there was a man burned to death inside, a corpse in there, and the police came around, he got identified, and he tried to claim the life insurance, which he got. He got all this money, and they gave some to the guy's, what would have been the guy's widow, you know, the guy with makeup on his face. But he didn't get a different corpse, he just burned the man to death. That he said, don't worry, I'll wake you up in a bit, don't trust the moustache. And he gave the widow $500, and then he said to her, actually, little lady, you're probably not very good with money, are you? And she's like, no, I am not. And he went, don't worry, I'll look after it and invest it for you. So he fucking killed her as well. So yeah, but he did, the one person he didn't pay, and it is one of his sort of bits of comeuppance, he didn't pay the train robber, and he got really fucked off, and he snitched on him. So he dobbed to the police, and then the police sort of had him on their radars and started speaking to the insurance company, who obviously had suspected him of something, because he was in there over a week like, have I just got the unluckiest family or what? So they already sort of had their eye on him.
The weirdest thing he did do in all of this is the guy that he blew up, he kept his kids.
Yeah.
Didn't he? And then the wife was sent away, and he takes the kids and he puts them into a boarding school and pays for it because it makes him look respectable.
Yeah, it's really strange, isn't it?
It's the most bizarre thing. I mean, I know he's done a lot of weird shit, but I think that's the weirdest, actually.
It's not like rich cunts to put their kids in boarding school to look respectable, is it? That's so you enjoyed that, didn't you?
Yeah.
So she basically, he said to her at the time, until he killed her, he went, oh, your husband's gone to New York. So they all sort of travelled off in different directions. He had the 3 kids with her, and then he sent the wife, this gets so complicated, right? So he sent the burned man's wife away to Detroit.
We should have learned the name.
Yeah. Ben. His name is Ben.
Wife.
Okay, he sent Ben's wife away.
That's not ridiculous enough.
No, okay.
The names have all been batshit. So.
Yeah. Bartholomew?
There you go.
Yeah, okay. Sent Bartholomew away to Detroit and kept the kids in this boarding school. And then the other person who was a witness, they jumped state. And then what happened is he got caught in Boston, then he got sent back to Philadelphia for the horse wrestling. And
Wrestling?
Oh, that's even better, isn't it? Wrestling. Maybe that's what swindling is. In the red corner, red rum. In the blue corner, fucking big moustache.
You swindling that horse? No, we were wrestling.
So that scene in Women in Love in front of a fire. So he got arrested, the police got up with him, and they basically said to him, you can go back to Texas where they will hang you for swindling horses, right? I think it was fucking hell. Or you can stay here and we can prosecute you for insurance fraud. And he said, well, I'll have the nice one, please. So he got prosecuted for that. And then basically, on the way there, the guard had him arrested and he went, I'll give you $500 if you let me hypnotise you. And he's like, absolutely not.
It's a brilliant thing to say, isn't it? He's always thinking of something.
Yeah. I'd love to like them open, the back of one of those like armoured carriages, open it up and there's nothing in there except a guard pretending to be a chicken. Oh, not again! So all these kind of women that he had relationships with, so the widowed woman who doesn't know her husband's dead yet is off in one corner of the country. And then his wife is off in Indiana, and then
there's another woman.
There's fucking loads of them knocking around. There's about 4 women he's got on the go at one point. Minnie's one of them, Carrie's one of them, Georgiana's one of them.
In the meantime, he has killed the children.
Yeah, it's fucking
That was
horrible.
a surprise. You weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
I mean, they are really irritating when they come back from boarding school. So he's killed these kids, and then sort of the people go, well, where's these children? And he's like, oh, Minnie took them, and she's took them to London because she's going to open a massage parlour. And
That's the dream, innit?
What's a massage parlour?
Yeah.
We don't really know. So that all happens. Then this is where they start looking in his house, isn't it?
Actually, there was a couple of policemen who were fucking amazing. That they knew there was something. It's so hard. He's had loads of different names. He's got loads of different properties. They knew something was up, so they started investigating him. They'd never seen a serial killer before. It was America's first serial killer. No one knew what they were getting in for, and the more and more horrific things they were uncovering, they're like, holy shit, because they assumed for a while, well, this must be several people doing this. So what happened is this really great police officer, he searched 900 properties that in the past few years H.H. Holmes had either stayed in or rented or sold or had something to do with. 900 properties to try and find these children. In one of the place he'd stayed with Kiri for a bit in Vermont, there was a massive hole dug in the garden, and she went, what are you digging that big hole for? It's just me and you here. And he was like, never you mind, woman! And just like, and then fell out with her and left. But I think that he was digging it to bury her in. The house that the kids were last seen in, he dug a big hole in the cellar, and they dug it up thinking they were going to find the children there, and they didn't. They eventually went through, like I say, 900 properties, and they found he'd been in there for a week. This one property, no one had been in there since. They spoke to the neighbour and they said, oh, he did ask to borrow a shovel. And then the policeman said, can I borrow that same shovel? And borrowed the shovel and dug up the garden, and unfortunately found the 2 little girls had been buried there, but the little boy was still missing. When they searched the house, they found a trunk in one of the bedrooms with a gas pipe going into it, and he'd said to the little girls, right, we're going to go and play hide and seek, and you hide. And when they got in the trunk, he gassed them in there because he's a piece of shit. And then they one person found that funny. Yeah. Shit's funny, innit? That's how I make a living. So with the little boy, they searched for him again and again. They found this sort of weird shack, and again, he was the last person to have been in it. And they found the stove. Basically, they found the burnt remains of a child in the kitchen stove. So he just shoved the kid in there. And I think he's done some pretty horrific things, but to kids. Because normally serial killers, for no reason as well. Although I know there could have been precocious shits, but just go for a big walk. Out, isn't it? But he's interesting because normal serial killers have a type. They have like Jeffrey Dahmer liked hairless men. Dennis Nielsen, the gay slayer loved a gay. They usually hunt into. A lot of time it's prostitutes or things like that. But he was killing men. He was killing women. He was killing children.
Sometimes killing a lot of people all together in one of these in the supplication room. He used to listen to it as well. I don't think it was for enjoyment. I just think he thought, all right, that's done now. I'll get rid of him. So there'd be maybe several people in one room, and he's just done like that. Yeah, he used to just stand there and wait for them to. Like when you check Twitter when you've got something in the microwave. He's basically doing that. When they got to the castle, which is obviously the big one, it took them 2 weeks to just make a floor plan of the place because they were like, we don't know what the fuck we're getting ourselves into here. So they made this massive floor plan. They found his quarters as well, which are quite nice. There was a trap door under the floor that when you lifted it up, you went down, you could turn right and go out onto the street, nice little shortcut, or you could go left and you could go down a chute into the furnace. So I imagine his guest went one way and he went the other. But they basically said that it was a chamber of horrors when they got there.
Yeah. Where was he while they were doing this?
He was incarcerated at this point.
Oh, okay.
So at the moment they were just holding him, being like, you've been fucking horses again, and you're a bigamist, because that's all they really had on him at the time, because it was just so huge that they kept him locked up for as long as they could. So they called it the Chamber of Horrors, because downstairs in the basement there was blood splattered implements, there was a stretching rack, there was Minnie Williams, a woman that he was involved with for a while. Her watch was found in the furnace, so we know what happened to her.
Well, I bet he was like, oh, that's good news, I'll let her know when I see her.
She's definitely not there. It's no wonder she's not turned up in a while. She's useless without a watch. In fact, because he had an affair with a woman called Julia as well for a while. That was when he was with his second wife, this woman called Julia, who used to work for him. They found her, even though she was with someone else at the time, Julia and her partner Ned had a big fight, and he was like, I know you've been flirting with him, and he pissed off, and then he came back when he sort of heard all these rumours and identified her dress that was covered in blood. She also had a little girl called Pearl, and they found bone fragments of a child her age in the furnace, so he just got bored of them at one point. And in fact he said, oh shit, I am missing a page, because he had that fucked up quote about something where he
there's
said,
a recording of him, isn't there?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's somebody found the really old recording devices where it was on like a tube. I can't remember what they're called. Somebody found one of those and they'd recorded his confession.
Oh really?
Yeah, I've scoured the internet for it and I can't find it anywhere. But apparently that recording.
You've not tried,
exist.
have you?
No, I was up late.
We missed the bit which was the on July 20th when they were excavating the cellar. and they could smell gas, and there was the tank that he had there. So there was an explosion. Nobody was injured in it, but by way of a change in his house. And he had a chemical vat that he was putting people in. And by this point, sort of rumours were starting to go around the town, weren't they, people?
Because they were trying to keep it hidden, because the press were like, what's going on over there? And they were like, nothing, we're doing a big refurb.
Yeah.
Because like the tabloids and papers love a serial killer, and like people love to hear about them. So they're worried that people would come and contaminate the scene and things like that.
So the rumour, what happened was after, and then on the 19th of August, the house burned down. People reported hearing 3 explosions, which were gas canisters. And people think that the house was burnt down by either an accomplice of Holmes, who was scared of being identified, or the neighbours, because they were sick of people coming to like gawp at the murder house.
Yeah.
It's because people were just turning up in droves to see what was going on. Because let's be honest, there wasn't much going on in those days, was there? People.
Well, the World Fair had fucked off, didn't it?
Yeah, the World Fair had gone.
It's like this place in the first week of September. Just flyers and baffled Japanese people. Like. Yeah, they.
I think the quote was it? I believe I have the devil in me. Was that?
The quote was. It says, "I was born with the devil in me." It says, "I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing." I'm going to be honest, he knew how to create a murder mansion, he knew how to think up all these schemes, but he doesn't know what a poet is.
And that's why there should be more Arts Council funding.
But he obviously was put on trial, which lasted 6 days, and it started on Halloween, which was quite nice, in 1895 in Philadelphia, and the papers loved it. It was all
Can I tell them about the trophy?
Yeah,
I've not told them about the trophies.
Right, it's horrible.
I'm going to use the word that you don't like to put your fingers in your ears.
Alright,
so
I'll tell you what, use it, and then we'll see my reaction.
Okay, and I'll let you try and guess the word that she's recoiling at. So when they were emptying the house, they found underneath the stairs, hidden very carefully, right, wrapped up in some cloth.
Which word was it?
Which word do you think it was? Yeah, that's what she bulks at. That's mad, isn't it?
Honestly, it makes me feel like I'm being choked. I'm going to have to get some help for it, I think.
So, in a piece of material, it was wrapped up, right? There was a ball made of strands of different women's hair. Right, he was basically like, I don't know if it was like some very macabre elastic band ball that he was making, but that was, they think, for the desk. Lovely bookmark. They think that that's what he was using. He would take a little bit of hair, like a strand of hair, and they found this clump of women's hair under the stairs, which I think is so creepy. It just sounds like the kind of thing you pull out a plug when you've been in a shared flat for a while.
I feel ill. Obviously, gotta get the work, talk about something else now. Quick. Think about the bodies. It was quite embarrassing for Holmes because obviously he was on trial. Georgiana, the lady who he was romantically involved with, she testified against him, and he was very upset by this.
Yeah, he wept when he saw her testifying against him. And then he did what a lot of arrogant, attractive serial killers do. Ted Bundy. He went, fuck you guys, sacked all his lawyers and went, I can make myself look sane by defending myself with no prior training, right? But apparently, just like Ted Bundy, he was fucking amazing, and they're like, well, he does cut a compelling case. And he was like, Your Honour, this man is insane, and therefore cannot be tried. He was arguing an insanity. He was basically trying to get an insanity plea, arguing on behalf of himself. And they said he did a really, really good job. But ultimately, it only took the jury 2.5 hours to find him guilty. The trial only lasted 6 days. And apparently the jury, when they spoke to him, they said, 2.5 hours, that's very quick. And they went, we'll be honest, we decided after a minute, but we thought it looked bad if we didn't take longer. Also, they get free lunch and shit, don't they? So like, if we can push this till 5, we get the hotel tonight. Fucking hell, if it's not that hotel.
You're staying in the suffocation suite. So they agreed upon minute. November the 30th, he was sentenced to death. He appealed, but obviously they went...
27 murders
Yeah.
and 6 attempted murders is what he went down for as well as a little bit of horse swindling and a little bit of bigamy as well, just to pepper the situation.
Can I just say, do you know how old he was at this point? 36. 36.
How old are you?
37.
3 Edinburgh shows, that's all he's fucking done. So he was convicted and he was sentenced to death by hanging. He also, while he was inside, he sold his story to a newspaper for £7,500.
Why? What is he going to do with that money?
Fuck knows.
As it turns out, what he should have done with that money is bought a better rope for the hangman because it took him 15 minutes to hang. Apparently his feet were going all over the show.
Well, it was quite. They said that he approached the gallows, and they said, "Ready, Dr. Holmes." I love that they still called him Doctor as well. Like he's probably one of those ones who's like, "I didn't work 7 years to be called Mister." So they said, "Ready, Dr. Holmes," and he said, "Yes, just don't bungle it." And then presumably the executioner was like. So they dropped him through, and then apparently his neck snapped, but because the rope was too tight, it went into his skin and he was still alive, and it took 15 minutes for his heart rate to actually stop. And then apparently they said that his fists were clenched for the whole time, and his legs were, this is their phrase, his feet were dancing. I don't think dancing's the right word. I don't think he was Charlestoning away while hanging there. He's a real mover, isn't he? It's a shame to kill him.
He's got ants in his pants.
So yeah, and he was, the other thing about him is that he wasn't repentant at all. 2 priests came to pray with him and gave him Holy Communion before, and they said, you need to ask for the Lord's forgiveness, and he went, yeah, fuck the Lord. Which I like. If you're keeping it through to the end, I'm like, well, fair play. He's a man who has the courage of his conviction.
I just imagine him saying, nah, but I'll have a piece of that bread though. That's really nice, that, thanks.
He also he made a request. Now normally they don't let murderers make requests, and he said, I want to be buried under 2 tons of concrete so no one can dig me up and dismember me, because he had a fear of being dismembered. It's like when you go out with a boyfriend and they're always like, are you cheating on me? And you're like, oh, you're fucking someone else. No, I understand. So they buried him under 2 tons of concrete, and then there's this thing that appears called, one of the more interesting things about him, believe it or not, is the curse of Holmes. It's a bit like a weird Tutankhamun thing, that basically in the 3 months after he died, these are all people who were in apparently very fit health. The coroner's physician died very suddenly of blood poisoning. The coroner and the judge on his case were both diagnosed with deadly illnesses that they didn't realise exist before and died within a few weeks. The prison superintendent, where he was in prison, committed suicide after complaining of being haunted for 2 weeks by voices after he was killed. The father of one of the victims was blown up in a freak gas explosion. The priest, one of the priests who came to give him his last Holy Communion, died of uremic poisoning. A lot of these are like, there's poisoning elements to them, which kind of suggests that maybe he had an accomplice who was still knocking around. And the insurance office, where you used to go in and be like, when they'd hear the bell and go, I bet that's fucking Holmes again. Morning! Busy weekend. Stag party. The insurance office, it burned down, it burned to the ground, right? And apparently, rumour has it that the only thing surviving was a framed copy of the warrant for his arrest and 2 framed portraits of him that hung in the office. I don't know why the fuck they've got framed pictures of him. Employee of the month on the fucking wall.
Or maybe they were just like, if it is him at the door, this man is like, do not let him in.
It's like, you've got pub watch in shit areas. It's like, people with no teeth like, please don't let Stinky Pete in again. So that's H.H.Holmes, and his curse kind of lived on. We found out today in the last couple of days, because there's been a bidding war to tell his story in Hollywood. And Leonardo DiCaprio has just won it. And
it was announced today.
Yeah.
How topical, and on it, a wig. It's going to be that, I think, that film.
I don't know, I can't buy him as an adult man.
I can buy him as a fucking psychopath who bangs loads of women. No, yeah, you can do that. Oh, I get it. He's been method for the last 30 years. Brilliant. So that's H.H.Holmes. They killed. Like I say, he's prosecuted for 29, 6 attempted. They think that he killed well in excess of 100 people, and there's no because the paper trail. A lot of these people were just in and out of town, and people who didn't have a particular paper trail. That there's no way of really knowing, but. He sold plenty of skeletons and plenty of organs to various medical colleges, who obviously all covered it up to keep their.
And in the end, plenty of papers.
Very nice. Fuck you, Murdoch. So that's him. That's H.H.Holmes. He's in my top 3 because I think he's fascinating. I'll be excited to see the film when it comes out. There are documentaries. They're usually on Channel 5, and they've got like a really bad plastic moustache and really bad American voiceovers, even though it was filmed in Durham.
Yeah.
So do watch it if you like him. If you've enjoyed what we do today, well, thank you so much for coming along. I think you've been the funnest lot that we've had so far.
You've been really nice.
So thanks very much for having no barometers of morals.
You've made it a lot easier.
Yes.
Are there any killers in?
I'm going to start asking that.
Give me a cheer if you have an abusive father. Tomorrow, I'm really excited about tomorrow. It's one of Rachel's favourites. She's getting an early night.
I am really excited.
Ed Gamble's going to come down. He's going to do Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, and right. That's a good one. And he started listening to the podcast, which is lovely, and then he was like, "I'm now obsessed with murderers," which we hear a lot. And
he's done loads of research.
Oh my god, he's been a right fucking geek. Yeah. No, he's great. He sent me a message where there's a stack of 5 books that he'd read about, and he's like, "I'm really worried that now I'm going to go and murder people." I was like, "It's fine. I think we'll get on the front page of Chortle. It'll be good for us in the end."
I'll be honest, I hope he starts it at the Fringe because I can just give him a list.
Yeah.
These fuckers out of the way.
So this has been the All Killer No Filler podcast.